What's going on, family? I'm so glad that you are here. Listen, we are moving into our new series for this month. It is called Problems and Promises. Let me ask you, which pathway are you on? Are you on a pathway where you're focusing on your problems, or are you on a pathway where you are focused on your promises? Well, listen, I want to help you make sure you choose the correct pathway. So in this new season, I want you to get ready for what you're about to birth. Let's get it. Hey YouTube, Rachel Harper here. Listen, we are starting today on a new series. This series is called Problems and Promises. Listen, if you've ever felt like you were at rock bottom, if you've ever felt like, God didn't hear you, like you was praying, you were doing all the things that you thought you were doing right, and yet none of your prayers were being answered, you still had stress, anxiety, fatigue, frustration, you still felt disappointed, you still felt unheard, this series is definitely for you because I want to help you get out of that rut. I want to help you know what to do in those moments when it feels like God is just not listening, when it feels like you're not being heard. And I want to help you get out of God's way, get peace of mind, and begin to build from rock bottom. Listen, I am Rachel Harper. I'm the CEO of the Empowered Woman Wellness and Life Coaching Practice. You can meet me over on rachelharper.org. We help you to do three things. Number one, we aim to help you prime your body so healing can occur. Number two, we show you how to make simple lifestyle changes so that you can get closer to your emotional, your physical, your spiritual health goals. All right. And then last, we focus on fundamentals of whole body healing, because as a woman, you are your mind, you are your body, you are your spirit, and all of it wants to be in balance. Now, unfortunately, there are times where you go through stress, right? There are times when you may feel like you're not healing from how someone harmed you, mistreated you, misled you. Right? And so how can you begin to free yourself of that emotional bondage? How can you begin to grab hold of God's promises for your life? So today I'm going to show you how to build even when you feel like you're at rock bottom. See, the problem is you believe the key to overcoming is to focus on your problems. Focus on all your problems and then pray to God and hope that He makes life better. Now, to reach your next level, it is not to focus on your problems, but it is to focus on God's solutions. Now, when you focus on the solution, God can then open the door to His promises. He can then open the door to your purpose. And then it is then at that point that emotional bondage can be let go. You can be emotionally healed. You can be emotionally free. And so as you are moving through this lesson today, I want you to think about, what is it that I'm trying to birth in my next season that is stopping me at this point from getting there, right? If you have stress, if you have anxiety, if you have fatigue, you have frustration, you have unhealed emotional wounds, I want you to think and put that in the forefront of your mind and just think, what is it that is stopping me from beginning to build at the bottom of that rock so that you can reach God's promises? So what is your rock bottom? So my rock bottom came back in 2011. Back in 2011, I was 8 months pregnant, and I lost my apartment and I lost my car. I lost it all. I felt like I lost it all. It was at that point that I was at my rock bottom. That is not to say that today, from day to day, that I don't deal with stress. Running a business is stressful. Being a wife can be stressful. Being a parent can be stressful. And I have those days sometimes where I just want to pull my hair out, when I feel like, you know what, I'm at the bottom of a rock and it's for me to do some things. So I want to show you what are some things that you can do, right? Maybe you're going through a bad breakup. Maybe you have declining health or declined health. Maybe you have lost some wealth. Maybe you are, seeking God's promises in health, wealth, in your relationships. Well, this is what we're going to look at is Naomi. The mistake we make oftentimes when it comes to Ruth, the book of Ruth, we often look at it from a shallow standpoint. We look at it from the standpoint of Ruth found her Boaz, right? And so we often say, you're Ruth and you'll find your Boaz. You get into your relationship, right? But I want us to take a deeper look at what we actually see from a human perspective, all right? So when we look at Ruth 1:3-5, so what this story says, now Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died and she was left with her two sons. They married Moabite woman, one named Orpah and the other Ruth. After they had lived there about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion also died, and Naomi was left without her two sons and her husband. So now we see Ruth at her rock bottom. This is the part we always pass over. We move past quickly. We don't stop and just sit in what was felt at this moment. When it came to Naomi, we always pass over Naomi and just skip straight to Ruth and Boaz. But let's deep dive into Naomi, because she obviously was at rock bottom. She had lost her husband. 10 years later, she lost both of her sons. So Ruth 1:19, it says, so the two women, that was Naomi and Ruth, Ruth was Naomi's daughter-in-law. So the two women went on until they came to Bethlehem. When they arrived in Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them. And the woman exclaimed, can this be Naomi? Right? So everyone in the hometown was excited to see them. And so when we look at the next one, Ruth 1:20-21, this is the human experience I want you to gravitate towards. I want you to really feel this human experience. Naomi said, don't call me Naomi, she told them. Call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life bitter. Mara means bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought misfortune upon me. So I want you to think about, in your moments of rock bottom, how have you felt? Have you felt stressed? Did you feel anxious? Do you feel fatigued? Do you feel frustrated? Do you feel bitter? Do you feel empty? Do you feel afflicted? Maybe you feel emotionally broken, flattened, fatigued. Maybe you feel mentally broken. Most of all, maybe you feel ignored by God. See, oftentimes what we do, we feel like Naomi. Naomi was able to put a name to how she felt. She said she felt bitter. She felt empty, right? And so in your moments, I want you to think about, it is okay for you to feel what you feel. In fact, what you don't feel, you can't heal. So those moments when you're trying to sweep your feelings under a rug, those moments when you're trying to say, I don't feel good, but I'm good. I'm good. I'm all right, right? And people ask you, well, what's going on? You short-tempered? You're not yourself. You don't feel like yourself, right? But you're telling everybody, I'm good. It is in this moment today, as you watch this, I want you to get used to understanding that the things that you sweep under a rug can become triggers later on. All right. And so what can you do? You see, many of us will go through what may feel like rock bottom, right? It may feel like rock bottom, but then we compare what we're going through with what someone else went through. So many times when we're trying to sweep things under a rug, number one, we don't want to bother anybody else. But number two, you may feel like, well, what you're going through has no comparison to what someone else went through, right? You're like, well, I didn't lose anybody. Nobody died. I still have a roof over my head. I still have my car. At least I still have this. At least I still have money in my pocket. Well, the thing is, whatever it is that you're going through, make this a declaration that this will be the last day, that you will make it small, right? If it's something, allow it to be something. Allow yourself to feel. Allow yourself to have that emotion. You have permission to feel exactly whatever it is that you're going through. At the end of the day, what you're going through is valid. Running a business is hard. Being a parent is hard. The human experience of living is hard. So if you're going through and it feels like you're at rock bottom, it feels like you're going through stress, this anxiety, the fatigue, the frustration, you're feeling empty, you're feeling bitter, your feelings are valid. But it's dangerous for you to sweep your feelings under a rug just because you're comparing it to someone else, because you feel like you haven't gone through loss. Listen, what you're going through is valid. Okay, and so you want to try to avoid having those triggers when you remain unhealed. Smells, different sights, different sounds, different feelings, different locations, different conversations can actually trigger you in such a way where you say, oh man, you're really not healed. You're not all right. You're not okay. And so those things don't trigger over into your business, into your parenting, into your relationships, into your money, into your purpose. It is for you to say, my feelings are valid, and let me receive help in such a way that I need to, need to receive it. So Naomi was on rock bottom. So now we see Naomi at the top of the rock. All right. She climbed her way up. So it says, then Naomi took the child in her arms and cared for him. The woman living there said, Naomi has a son, and they named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. So wait a minute, where did this child come from, right? She didn't have a child. She said she couldn't have, any more children. She wasn't married. So what happened is Naomi, of course, we know the story, right? Got with Ruth, mentored Ruth. Ruth got with Boaz. Ruth and Boaz had a baby. The baby name was Obed. So between chapters 1 and 4, we see Naomi walking in her purpose. Her purpose was mentorship in that moment, right? So she mentored Ruth, and she showed Ruth how to have favor with Boaz. And so what was the end result? The end result was right here. We see the promises of God, right? We see Ruth got married to Boaz as a result of Naomi being obedient to her assignment. So she was able to get herself to the top of the rock. As she was climbing her way to the top of the rock, she was able to be obedient to her assignment. You see, it is when you are in the bottom of the rock, when it feels like you're at rock bottom, it is then that your purpose and your promises really don't manifest like they could, like they should, like God wants them to. The promises are still available. The purpose is still there, but sometimes you have that block. Those blocks are stress, it's anxiety, it's fatigue, it's the blood pressure, it's the feeling empty, it's the feeling left out, it's the feeling unheard, right? Those are the things that block you. Those are the things that keep you in emotional bondage. So we've seen that Ruth ended up becoming having a baby. Naomi became the caregiver. But what you see here is not just a baby being born. You see David. You see 2 generations over, David is then born. And what we know David to be, we know him to be the Goliath slayer. He slayed Goliath, all right? And so that was important. So had Naomi stayed at the bottom of the rock, 2 generations later, David would not have been born. The generation would not have Goliath being slain. And then that cycle of, bondage in their generation would have kept on. So what is the lesson? So you may believe that this is a story about a woman who had hit rock bottom, but in fact, this is a story about you. This is actually a story about you. You see, when you focus on distractions, when you focus on problems instead of solutions, you never reach the promises of God. You only see other things. You only see the problems. You see the rejection. You see stories. You replay stories over and over again in your head, right? That happened to you before. But when you focus on the promise, when you focus on the solution, when you focus on the purpose, it is then that you can begin to climb that rock. So don't focus on the problem. Focus on the solution. So what is one of God's promises? You see, Naomi gave herself permission to feel. But what she didn't do, she didn't stay stuck in that moment. So like I said before, what you don't feel, you can't heal. And so it's for you. If she didn't move throughout the entire scripture trying to get an answer as to why she was at the bottom of the rock, right? We got to learn the same thing. How can we move on? How can you move on? How can you learn how to be healed instead of just answered all the time? You see, sometimes when you're searching for the why, when you're searching for the answer, you're trying to figure out, why didn't they apologize? Why aren't doors opening? Why don't God hear me? Why isn't the business working? Why don't I have more money? It is then in those moments that you focus too much on the problem instead of the solution, God's solution. And so it is for you to sit still in some of those moments, for you to sit still and hear God's solution so that you can move forward in the promises. And so if you need help with learning how to sit still in those moments when it feels like you're not being heard, go to rachelharper.org/healing and take the other study that I have. And I'm going to show you at the end. So stay into the end. I'm going to show you exactly what that study is. So one of God's promises, when you don't focus on the problem, but focus on the solution, God said, I will fight for you, right? You need only to be still. You need only to be still, right? It is in those moments that you can hear God's solution to the problems that you're going through. Another one of God's promises, and we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. So at Naomi's rock bottom, we see her calling and God's purpose show up, right? We see her calling of mentorship. We see her calling of caregiver for the baby, right? So she still had a calling. She still had God's promises waiting on her. But it was for her to feel what she could heal so she could move forward in the promise. And so for the same thing, I want the same thing for you. At what point do you heal and allow God's promises to manifest? At what point do you allow that to happen, right? You're too busy trying to look for the answers. You're too busy trying to look for the why. In fact, if you do get an answer, let me tell you something. The answer still may not be good enough for you. But not only that, answers create more questions, which create more answers, which create more questions, which create more answers. And now you're on this cycle and you're never healed. Be healed instead of answered. So because of the evil done against Joseph by his own brothers, we also see what's going on in your life, right?
So what happened to Joseph and his brothers, instead of him getting revenge and remaining emotionally, mentally, and physically stuck in the situation that he was going through, we see him saying in Genesis 50 and 20, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. That sounds to me like promise. How about to you? That sounds to me like one of God's promises. So the truth is we're all connected, right? So we see him saying here, the saving of many lives, right? So we can see his story, or we can go back to his story, see what happened to him, translate it to our lives, and save ourselves, save our own lives, right? Self-healing based off of the stories of Joseph and his brothers. But I'm going to say, based off of what you're going through, once you start to climb your way up through the top and move away from rock bottom, it is then that others will be able to take your story and move too, and heal too, and understand how to move beyond the rock. So the question is, how many lives have you saved since coming out of your rock bottom? Or even further, how many lives could you save if you decided to move beyond rock bottom? When will you start the podcast, right? We want to hear your story. We want to understand how you moved beyond the rock. We want to know how it felt when you were on the rock. We want to hear it. We want to read it in your book. We want to see it manifest in your business. We want to help you develop a program, study group, develop the workshop, implement the care group, get back into dating, find love again, become a mentor, right? What is it that you can overcome from rock bottom and then move into your next season? So you're waiting to build and birth for your next season because right now it feels like you're on rock bottom. So your business isn't really thriving. Your relationships really isn't thriving. Your wealth really isn't where it wants to be because right now you're sitting in stress. Right now you're sitting in anxiety. Right now you're lacking peace. So it is up to you to make the decision that just like Naomi, I'm going to move into my next season because there are many lives that's waiting on me to show up. And so I want to ask you this question. What are you believing God to birth in your next season? Is it the book? Is it the podcast? Is it the business? Is it the relationship? Is it peace, joy? Is it less stress? What are you believing God for in your next season? Well, as you are waiting or moving into your next season, as you are working your way up, there are 3 mistakes I want you to avoid, right? Because I want you to begin reducing your stress. But as you begin to move and reduce your stress and work your way up from rock bottom, 3 mistakes you want to avoid. First one, avoid the mistake of isolating yourself, right? When you isolate yourself, you're more prone to have the enemy use your mind for his playground, right? Like they say, an idle mind is the devil's playground, right? Because then it's at that point when you're in isolation that you begin to have wild thoughts, different feelings, different behaviors, right? So Naomi tried to isolate herself, but Ruth wasn't having it. Ruth said, I'm going to stick around. So Naomi said, okay, so find you someone who you can be in community with. Don't isolate yourself, right? Number 2, avoid remaining at a heightened level of stress. When you remain at a heightened level of stress, there are 3 things that can harm. It can harm your psyche, it can harm your behaviors, and it can harm your physical body. Psychologically, you might have a loss of ability to focus. Right? When you're in your birthing season, guess what you got to do? You got to focus on what's coming next. You got to focus on the promise. You got to focus on the purpose. But if you are psychologically stressed, then you can't focus. It's hard to focus. You might have different outbursts of anger. Maybe you have irritability. So now you still can't focus on what's coming next. You can't focus on the next season. You can't focus on your birthing season. So what about behaviorally, right? You might have loss of sleep. Now you need sleep pills to rest. You might drink more. You might have some different thoughts or different behaviors of harming yourself, right? So we have that heightened level of stress, especially long term. It can be dangerous, right, to your behaviors. Then physically, it can affect you physically, okay? You might have physical fatigue. You might have headaches. You might have reduced immune response, and now you're wondering why you're sick all the time. You might have different skin interruptions. You might have irritable bowel syndrome. Heart attacks can happen, and your body just feels it. So even in those days where you say, I'm good, I'm all right, I'm good, your cells, your body can still feel that stress on a cellular level. And so this is why it's crucial for you to move forward, to begin to climb the rock, to begin to reduce that stress. And the last mistake that you want to avoid hiding and sitting on your gifts. Now, healing is not going to be pretty. Healing may take time. And so what you're doing, you might have to just stop everything that you're doing, right? But then there are some things that's waiting on you, like your gifts. So like I said before, in your birthing season, there might be some new things that you're going to do in your business, with your book, start a podcast, start a mentorship, start a group. There are some different gifts that you say, you know what? It's time for me to write that song. It's time for me to really move forward and get unstuck, get emotionally free from what it is that you're going through, right? Because your gifts, they're waiting on you to show up in rooms where people like me, people who are around you, need your expertise. They need your help. They need you to show up. They need to hear your story. We need to hear your story. We need to know how we can move beyond what it is that we're going through based off of your story. So once you show up and find your promises, then guess what? We can begin to get what we need as well. And so you are an empowered woman. The empowered woman allows her mind, her soul, and her body to be balanced. The promises of God need you to make simple lifestyle changes that will get you closer to your mental, your physical, and your spiritual abundance, right? Once you have everything in alignment, once you have everything in balance, it is then that optimal health can happen. It is then that you can fully carry out what you're about to birth in your next season. Okay, so the balanced mind and body seeks therapy when the rock feels too heavy, a burden to bear. The balanced mind and body builds upon the rock with help from like-minded individuals who too are climbing the rock. And the balanced mind and body allows God to sit on the throne and do the work. See, sometimes we're sitting on the throne and sitting in God's way. The only causes you more stress when you looking for an answer. I said that before. Now, here's the thing. Society says that rock bottom means you cannot build. That's not true. I want you to look at it in this way. The rock is a sure foundation for you to build and birth your promise and your purpose. It is a sure foundation. When you are at rock bottom, it is an opportunity for you to begin to heal and then begin to grow your purpose and begin to reset inside of God's promises. You'll never be able to manipulate a situation that is not in your control. So it is for you to relinquish control, stop focusing on the problems, focus on God's solution, walk into his promises, begin to walk into your purpose. It is a sure foundation to begin to do that. So when we look at Deuteronomy 32:4, it says that he is the rock. Let's not look at the rock as rock bottom anymore. Don't look at your stress. Don't look at your situations. Don't look at the things that you're going through as rock bottom, meaning I can't work my way up. This is it. This is the end. I can't go through it anymore. I can't move forward. Nothing else is going to happen. Nothing is going to get better. No, when you hit that rock, it says that he is the rock. That is at the point where you can begin to build the next foundation. Work in your birthing season once you hit that rock, because you're not alone on the rock. God is the rock. It says his works are perfect and all his ways are just. A faithful God who does no wrong, upright and just is he. Stop looking at your situation as rock bottom and instead see it as your solid foundation to build and birth for your next season. So 3 things that you can walk away with: how to get out of God's way, get peace of mind, and build up from rock bottom. Because again, you can do it because God is the rock. Number 1, get into community with like-minded women who are also ready to heal, who are ready to grow, who are ready to reset, who are ready to balance their mind, their body, and their spirit for the promises soon manifesting in your life. Number 2, decrease your stress by focusing on God's promises instead of your problems. And then number 3, show up and show the world your gifts. We're ready. The world is ready for you to birth a Goliath slayer, right? So it's time for you to take your journey to higher heights by starting your journey at a higher level. But even if you have to start building from rock bottom, know that God is the rock. It's not over. It's not over until God says it's over. So the longer you remain in the seat of God, the longer it'll take for your mind, your body, and your spirit to heal and officially walk into the rest and peace of God. All right? So this series is called Promises. It's called Problems and Promises. Which one are you focused on? Are you going to focus on the problem, or are you going to focus on the promise? Now, I want to show you in this series how to effectively develop a lifestyle of emotional, physical, and spiritual habits that'll help you become an excellent steward of what you're ready to birth for your next birthing season. So what I want you to do is start your journey at rachelharper.org/healing. This is going to help you get your journey to healing, okay, for your next season, your next birthing season. But I want you to remember that in this series right now for your life, it is for you to not say that you are at rock bottom, but it is for you to say that right now you are building upon the rock, which is God. I'll see you in the next one.
Hey family, listen, I hope you enjoyed that study, but listen, I want to personally invite you into what is coming up next. Listen, you don't want to miss your seat. Don't allow anybody else to take your seat inside of this new 5-day challenge that I have coming up. You will be the first cohort, the brand new cohort into this brand new 5-day challenge. Listen, in this challenge, I want to help you begin to build into your birthing season. Listen, you got to get rid of all that emotional bondage. You got to get rid of all that unhealthy lifestyle that is keeping you from walking into your promises. So if you are ready and you are interested, I want you to go to rachelharper.org/challenge to get more information about saving your seat. Let's go.